الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين فاطر السماوات والأرضين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين الهداة المهديين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this first khutbah, I'd like to discuss a hadith that we have, a saying that we have from our first Imam, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, about how we as believers should budget our time or spend our time, what kind of a schedule we should make at a top level of priorities, and not necessarily the specifics and the details that will come under those priorities. And the important point that I want to emphasize is that there is a different basis for our planning and our scheduling that we find in the teachings of Ahlul Bayt than the way that we generally think of how to live life, or the way that popular culture often, sometimes even without our realizing it, pushes us to live our lives. And even in our religious experience and in our religious lives, we're sometimes influenced by that popular culture. And this is that we often compartmentalize different areas of responsibility in our life, and we think of them as separate. And the result of that is that we have periods when we are focused on one area of our life and we forget or lose sight of other priorities within our life. And then when we have a deadline approaching, when we have a major responsibility approaching, then we forget everything else and we think about that exam that we have, that deadline that we have, and then when that passes, then our priorities go back to something else. That starts for many people from a young age. In school, many people, in college or in school, they will not really give much importance to their studies for the course of the school year or for the course of the semester. And then you have midterms, and all of a sudden everyone's in the library because they have a paper to write, or they're on their computer trying to do in one night what they should have been doing over the last few weeks. When there's a time for a final exam, then people are overdosing on caffeine and energy drinks and trying to quickly make up for an entire year's worth or maybe several years' worth of study. That becomes an industry then, where you have these courses that are designed not to supplement what people have studied well, but to make up for not having done what you should have done during the course of the school year. And for many people, that is also part of work. Many people work very hard and they might overcommit to their work schedule. Maybe 12, 13 hours of the day is devoted to work, 5, 6 days a week. And then afterwards, you're also busy mentally and maybe even in reality taking care of those work affairs. And what that means is that everything else is on hold. And for some people, that model is dignified with the name work hard, play hard. When you're on vacation, then it's just a time to enjoy. And when you're working, then you really don't have time for family, you really don't have time for religious development, you don't have time for other things. Now, some of that is outside of our control, because when society operates in a certain way, then entertainment is only entertainment and it's devoid of any moral or any religious importance. Work is considered to be an end in itself. Other compartments of our life, they're given importance in and of themselves. But the teachings that we have from Ahlul Bayt are that to the extent that we are able to take control of our scheduling and our timing, is to have a portion of every day devoted to different areas of importance. So we're not just working when we work and just entertaining ourselves or relaxing when we are not at work. We're not just thinking about religion at those religious high points of the year, and then for the rest of the year, the masjid is a stranger for us, the Quran is a stranger for us. Thinking about our religious priorities and development all become a stranger for us and outside of our mind. Sometimes find that there's people you only see them in Muharram. There's people you will only see them in the month of Ramadan. In Muharram, they won't shave. But then Ashura will pass, and that wonderful physical representation of giving importance to religion, that also passes. And then they might not even be visible until next year, or maybe until the next Eid. So these are common kinds of things that we see in our communities, that we sometimes even might fall into that pattern, maybe without realizing it. The principle in Islam, before I get to the hadith of Imam Ali, is that we should, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, is that we should strive for constancy in our actions. We should strive for the ability to have mudawama and to have a regular kind of practice. And in order to have a regular kind of practice, it needs to be in moderation. And that is why many ahadith tell us that to do qaleel, to do a small amount of worship, but with constancy, qalilun madumun alayh. If you have a small amount that you do with constancy, that is more beneficial for you and more effective than if you have a spurt of energy and then because you've overdone it, now you need to take a break from that worship or from that practice. There are peak times in our religious life. Laylatul Qadr is a peak time of spiritual power and potency. But the goal should be for Laylatul Qadr to be that extra that helps us raise our baseline, and not that focused worship that substitutes for constant and daily worship. So it's not that you don't have those peak times where you go above and beyond the call of duty, but you think of those periods as an opportunity to anchor and to reinforce and to lift your baseline. Don't think of it as, all right, I've done my yearly quota of Quran recitation in the month of Ramadan. Until next year, I'm not going to come back to it. I've asked Allah for all my yearly hajat on Laylatul Qadr, so I don't need to worry about dua and I don't need to worry about my hajat that much in the remainder of the year. I've shed my tears in 10 days of Muharram, and so now I don't need to be present for the other occasions of commemoration and celebration and mourning of Ahlul Bayt throughout the year. Those are that focused time that raise our baseline. So when you're present in Muharram, that brief majlis that you attend outside of Muharram will touch you more deeply because you have reaffirmed your commitment to Imam Hussein. But what you did in Muharram does not substitute. The recitation of Quran that you did in Shahr Ramadan does not substitute for recitation outside of the month. The du'as that you recited on that particular day of Arafah or that particular night of Qadr do not substitute for remembering Allah everywhere else. Our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, إِنِّي أُحِبُّ أَنْ أَلْقَى رَبِّي or أَنْ أَقْدَمَ عَلَى رَبِّي وَعَمَلِي مُسْتَوٍ. I would love to meet my Lord or to come upon my Lord in the hereafter in such a state that my actions, my good deeds have constancy. That if I am praying, then I am praying with regularity. If I am doing ta'qibat and nawafil and other good deeds, then it's not that I just make one donation and then I forget about it. It's not that I help out a neighbor or a relative once and then forget about it, but that good deed is something that is continuous and is constant. Imam Ali gives us a method for developing that constancy, that mudawama and that istiwa, that regularity and that perpetual ability to do good deeds. In a hadith, our first Imam, Amirul Mu'mineen, alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, لِلْمُؤْمِنِ ثَلَاثُ سَاعَاتٍ. Every believer should have 3 hours. That doesn't mean that your day is divided into just these 3 hours. إِنَّ لِلْمُؤْمِنِ ثَلَاثَ سَاعَاتٍ or لِلْمُؤْمِنِ ثَلَاثُ سَاعَاتٍ. Every believer should have 3 periods in the day devoted to 3 things. It should be there every day. And sa'a does not necessarily mean an hour, but it's a period of time. So the period of time might depend on how busy you are with other obligations. But even if you're very busy, make an effort to do all 3 of these things every day, because that is part of what you need, body and soul, in order to be a worthy mu'min. Sa'atun yunaji fiha rabbah. One period of the day is to talk intimately with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Munajat is to have an intimate conversation with Allah. We can pray, we can theoretically know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our creator and our sustainer, but in many ahadith we are told that Allah in His relationship to you will mirror and reciprocate your relationship with Him. Not because it is a tit-for-tat relationship or it is a transactional relationship, but because when you open your heart to Allah, then He fills your heart with mercy and with grace. And when you close your heart, then you have come to the sea and only brought a very small container. If you're only able to carry a little bit within that container, that's not because the sea is not infinite. It's not because the sea is not expansive. It's not because the sea is being stingy. It's because that is the container that you brought. That is what you are worthy of taking. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reciprocates not because it is just a transactional relationship, but because the extent to which you open yourself to Allah and you are receptive, that is the extent to which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will respond and will provide His guidance and His grace. So ahadith tell us that if you are an optimist about Allah, then Allah will fulfill your high expectations and exceed them. And if you are a pessimist about Allah, then that is how Allah will treat you. Not as a punishment necessarily, but because if you are pessimistic and Allah were to show you mercy, you wouldn't recognize it as a favor of Allah anyway. You would say it's a coincidence, or it's because of my own talents or my own efforts, or because of somebody else. And therefore, for Allah to show you that mercy would not be able to provide you guidance. And so Allah will not give any importance to that grace, to that gift, because His interest in providing you extra is to facilitate a greater reliance on Him, a deeper faith and trust in Allah. If you are an optimist, then Allah will treat you kindly. If you are a pessimist, then Allah will treat you in accordance with your dhan or your estimation of His manner and His attributes. If you think of Allah, then Allah will think of you. And if you want to know in your heart whether you are a believer or not, then to find out what Allah thinks of you, all you need to examine is, what place does Allah have within your heart, within your decision making, within your priorities? So we see that this is a reciprocal relationship. Allah mirrors the thinking and the priorities and the action of the believer. And so it is very important, if we want Allah to treat us as an intimate friend, to look out for us with His special mercy and His special grace, we have to think of Allah as our intimate friend. And that is what it means to do sa'atun yunaji fiha rabbah. Speak intimately with Allah. Sometimes commonly get that question that, when Islam says that ghiba is prohibited, gossip is forbidden, but what if I want to just vent, and I need that catharsis, I need to rant. So can I tell my spouse how evil their parents are, because I need to let it out somewhere. I don't want to be disrespectful to my in-laws. I think that laughter is because many of you have seen and perhaps experienced something like that in some relationships. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If you need to vent, and if you need to rant, and if you need to let out that steam, then look for that catharsis with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because even if you tell a loved one, who knows if they might take it the wrong way? If one day they might use it against you. If they might give sympathy, but they might not be able to provide insight into how to develop a more moral framework to responding. Maybe they'll even sympathize with you, and they'll validate your feelings. But does that make you a better person? Well, that requires receiving guidance from a source that has a greater insight and a greater wisdom than you have. And when you put those words to Allah, then you are orienting yourself to Allah. Then you will be able to see how the examples of the prophets mentioned in the Quran, the example of our Prophet and Ahlul Bayt of our Prophet mentioned in their prayers and in their sayings and in their life stories are relevant for you. And so you will find that depth. You will find the catharsis and the relief, but you will also find a source for becoming a better person and dealing with things better in the future than you are able to deal with them now. When your intimate companion and confidant and source of strength and support is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you will not have any of those harms of isolation and loneliness and alienation or speaking ill of others that you might otherwise have. And so Imam Ali says this is first. That the first thing that you should make time for every day is sa'atun يُنَاجِي فِيهَا رَبَّهُ. Talk to Allah. And talk to Allah intimately, not formulaically, not just in passing, but your hajat, your worries, your frustrations, your needs. And if you open yourself to Allah in that way, then He will open the doors of His mercy and grace to you. The second, وَسَاعَةٌ يُحَاسِبُ فِيهَا نَفْسَهُ. You need an hour where you are taking stock of yourself. Muhasaba, spiritually, is often used for that process of taking stock of our good and our bad deeds. So whatever good I have done, I thank Allah for the tawfiq and ask Him to continue giving me that strength to do good. And whatever evil I have done, I admit it, I make amends. If I have wronged somebody else or if I have missed an obligation, I fulfill that obligation, I perform the qada, for example, or I pay the kafara. And then I ask Allah's forgiveness and His strength not to make that mistake again. And so that is what we generally know of as a reckoning or a muhasaba in our spiritual life. But Imam Ali doesn't say it's only muhasaba of your spiritual affairs. Take stock. Every day you should take stock of what is important to you. يُحَاسِبُ فِيهَا نَفْسَهُ. Take stock. Take stock of your spiritual affairs as I just described, your good and your bad deeds. But also your material affairs. Have you lost contact with relatives that it is important for you to look after? Are you neglecting some of your worldly affairs? Is your budget no longer in order? And does it need to be fixed? So taking stock of all of your affairs and your responsibilities, they are all religious affairs. Because all of the roles that you have as a human being, they are in service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take stock of those affairs. That is number two. So number one was talk intimately to Allah. Number two is take stock of yourself. In particular for your spiritual affairs, but also for all of your other worldly roles and responsibilities. And then number three, وَسَاعَةٌ يُخَلِّي بَيْنَ نَفْسِهِ وَلَذَّاتِهَا فِيمَا يَحِلُّ وَيَجْمُلُ. And then you need an hour where you have your soul, you give your soul the freedom to do that which it enjoys. Have a hobby. Have something that you do which you enjoy, and only make sure that it is yahil wa yajmul. It should be something permissible, and it should be something that is dignified and that is beautiful, and not something that takes away your honor or your dignity as a believer, not something, of course, that is prohibited. So those are three things. Speak to Allah and tell Him your personal affairs. Take stock daily of your life and what is important and what is not, what is good and what is not. And give yourself an opportunity for leisure and enjoyment. And if you do that regularly, then you will find that you don't have those extreme impulses that come up because you are meeting your bodily needs, your emotional needs, your spiritual needs on a regular basis. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. May Allah grant all of us the tawfiq to remain in intimate connection with Him, to keep stock and a reckoning of all of our worldly affairs, and to make sure that we are looking after the health and the needs of our soul, so we have that strength and we have that energy and we have that motivation that we need to continue on the straight path. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Sallu ala بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين صلوات الله. Astaghfirullah li wa lakum. I seek forgiveness from Allah for myself and for all of us present. In the same hadith of Imam Ali that I discussed in the first khutbah, the Imam continues and he gives us 3 reasons why it is recommended in Islam or acceptable in Islam for a person to make the intention of travel. لا ينبغي للمؤمن أن يكون شاخصا إلا في 3. There's 3 justified reasons why you may go through the effort of traveling. 1, مرمة للمعاش. 1 is if it's good for your worldly affairs, for education, for experience, for commerce, for income. If it has a worldly benefit for you, if it's مرمة للمعاش, then that is 1 reason why a person should travel. The second, khutwa lil ma'ad. If a person is taking a step for their hereafter, doing something that is good for their religious well-being. This would include a trip for ziyarah, a trip for umrah, a trip for hajj, a trip to visit or participate in a religious gathering so that you can benefit from the community, you can benefit from that collective worship, you can benefit from that religious environment. So, khutwa lima'at, to take a step for your religious affairs is a justified reason for travel. And then, to travel for what you enjoy, في لذة في غير محرم. To travel for something that is a hobby, something that is enjoyable as long as it is not haram. So in the conclusion of that hadith, the Imam once again tells us that when it comes to your daily affairs, when it comes to travel, then making that expense, making that effort for the enjoyment of your soul, for relaxation and for leisure is good. But that ladha is mentioned 3rd. So make sure that you prioritize your ma'ash, because if your ma'ash is not well taken care of, then you will not be able to serve your religion and fulfill your spiritual role to the fullest extent of your ability. And religion is mentioned 2nd. That is important for us to plan our travel in a way that furthers our religious well-being. So if you have time off, if you have a vacation, then try to arrange it in such a way that you can periodically be present at places that rejuvenate your faith. If you can afford it, umrah, ziyarah, they take priority. But for those whose circumstances, whose obligations, whose finances may not allow that, then whatever places there are that allow you to rejuvenate and strengthen your faith, a conference, a religious gathering, a masjid, these are also places that can be thought of as khutwa lima'ad, a step that helps you remember and deepen your insight for the sake of the hereafter. And then third, it is also important for us to develop an ability to appreciate halal pleasures, halal entertainment. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us the grace to be able to think of all three of these obligations, not as being in conflict with one another, but as supplementing and as supporting one another, then we will be able to live a well-rounded life. You don't need moderation from something external to religion, because these teachings are the essence of religion. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, his every moment, and I won't even say every waking moment, because whether it is a moment of wakefulness or a moment of sleep, every breath, every moment of Imam Ali's existence is devoted to religion. From that religion, he says that you are to have moderation. Your enjoyment is to be dignified and honorable. Your worship is to be in consonance with your familial and your material obligations. Your work and your commerce is to be harmonious with your religious obligations. And we strive for that harmony and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq and grace in that struggle. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idhukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.